It seems like just yesterday we were on our last inaugural with JetBlue from New York to Edinburgh. Today's inaugural, however, has been on my schedule for a long time. It's been 6 months since the announcement that Delta would be launching service from Seattle, their West Coast hub and Asia gateway, across the ocean to Taipei, and we're here to take the journey in their Delta One business class cabin, and I'm coming to you live from the quietest corner I could find in Taipei's biggest airport, so bear with me. Good early morning from Seattle Tacoma International Airport, where it's clear skies and a bit chilly. Perfect weather for a party as we make our way over to the check-in areas, past all the international carriers, and onto the middle section, which is all Delta and a few of their SkyTeam partners. The fanfare began here with the first of many balloon arches and these little Taiwanese pineapple cakes. Over at the Sky Priority and Delta One check-in area, there wasn't any more than some balloons. But at least the check-in was super quick, as I figured there'd be more fanfare waiting for us at the gate. Delta wasn't the only carrier with balloons, however. As I walked past Southwest's counters, they were celebrating 30 years of continuous service to Seattle. Once we got through security, we were able to see the award-winning terminal here in Seattle. The hallways are wide and the art is plentiful, and I've never seen so many shops with merch of the city that isn't just tacky souvenirs. I did have to spend some time smack dab in the center, which houses a large central hub, allowing some of the best ramp views of the airport through a floor-to-ceiling window. And yeah, sure, it's incredible, but with my business class ticket, we get access to Delta's SkyClub here in Seattle. Delta uses mostly the A and S gates in Seattle, and their current lounge is early on in the A concourse. Opened in 2016, this SkyClub was voted North America's leading airport lounge for its first 3 years, and they have another one on the way. Perhaps the biggest thing about Delta is that they're the only major US carrier without a flagship lounge, for now. Later this month, JFK should be opening the very first Delta One lounge, similar to United's Polaris lounges or American's flagship lounges. LAX is set to follow that, but besides that, we've just got a bunch of Delta SkyClubs, although most of them aren't quite as big as this one. Tons of seating, loads of food and drink, and most impressively, 2 floors. The only thing that seems to be missing is that familiar Delta SkyClub scent that they pump into every SkyClub. I did get a chance to check out some of the art around the lounge. Downstairs there was sculptures carved into pencil graphite, and upstairs was a similar concept, but with crayons. Speaking of upstairs, if you do feel like lugging your bags up a floor, you'll find a much less crowded area, with views of not only the ramp, but also the rest of the people down below. Breakfast in aviation seldom provides too much creativity, and this was no exception. Even still, I got my breakfast, I got my coffee, and I grabbed myself a seat alone with a view out the window. Before boarding, I also ventured to their showers. After all, a good lounge has to have a good shower, and the shower suites in here were an excellent size, just missing some amenities like dental kits and combs. By the time I made my way out of the lounge, there was a miniature setup of inaugural goodies at the lounge greeting counter. I do appreciate this little touch, similar to United having food from the inaugural destination in a corner of their Polaris lounges for customers to enjoy. At gate A10, it was time for the celebration. The crowds had already gathered and featured some goodies. There was cookies and Taiwanese bubble tea. They don't use the word boba as much as we do because of the double meaning in their slang. There was a photo booth of sorts where you could take a pic with the Seahawks mascot, but I, as a Niner fan, went solo. The boarding area was adorned with another balloon arch, and there was Taipei signage around the whole gate area. Then it was time for some speeches from SeaTac, Taiwanese, and Delta executives, obviously all excited for the new flight, given in front of course, 2 more balloon arches. To wrap it all up, of course, was the ribbon cutting with all the execs and Seahawks mascot before the crew came in for a big group photo before they boarded to prep for our boarding. After pre-boarding, we were up, and they had the greeters handing out a couple more goodies to celebrate this flight. With that, welcome on board the Delta A330neo, the aircraft with a 1-2-1 setup in business class, known here as Delta One. Perhaps my biggest gripe with Delta is the fact that their business class is known as Delta One on international flights, along with flights to San Francisco and Los Angeles. However, Delta One comes in a number of different setups. I've flown Delta 40 times, 4 times internationally, and 3 in business class. In those 3 flights, one was the 767-400, one was the A330-300, and now this one, the A330-900. All videos were up on my channel, and they all have different setups, with differing levels of design and privacy. This one, however, is the best of the ones I've flown so far, so let's check it out at seat 6A. For starters, you'll definitely want an even-numbered seat as they're closer to the window and offer some more privacy and quiet. The headrest has their Delta One logo but isn't adjustable besides tilting. The seat itself isn't exactly the most comfortable, but it does look great. There's a small immovable armrest below the 3 windows at my suite. In front is a TV which is big, so big that it gave me a little headache being this close to it. Then below that is a fairly narrow footrest. The entry's narrow, which gives some extra privacy, but there's also a door which we can close once we get into cruise. There's also a large countertop adorned with Delta's classic prism design. The tray table comes out from there with the push of a button, and below that is some of the basic seat controls, perfect when reclined. For more seat controls, just look up by the counter to adjust things individually, along with the charging ports. There is a nice accent light above that, also an opening here to store things like amenities and headset. Perhaps the best part, however, is the overhead air vents that you've gotta appreciate on wide bodies these days. Amenities came heavy for this 12-hour flight, starting with a water bottle and mimosa to start the journey. We were also handed the menus, which I stored away for now. Then was the over-ear headphones, which sat in their little hook here for a while. We can't forget the slippers, despite no pajamas unfortunately. Bedding-wise, there was a mattress pad, which will be good in this firm seat, along with a bag that contained a pillow and comforter. Then of course was the amenity kits. I've come to really like the bags Delta uses, even if the amenities are fairly basic, although the Grown Alchemist lotion is excellent. When it comes to inaugurals, however, it's not complete without the goodies we get. First off, you can recall the pineapple cakes we got at check-in, along with the bubble tea and cookies at the gate. On boarding, we were then given 3 things, the first being a luggage tag labeled with a specific flight, along with a pin and keychain for the same thing. Waiting at the seat for every business class passenger was also a little Delta goodie bag. Inside was a handwritten note welcoming us on board, which was an excellent touch, but nothing compared to the Delta Airlines passport cover, potentially my favorite freebie I've ever received in my travels. Now noon must be a busy time here in Seattle because even with 3 runways, we were still like 100 in line for departure, while the water cannon salute just sat awkwardly waiting. In December 2023, Delta announced they'd be launching a daily, year-round service from their Seattle hub to Taipei. This would be Delta's 4th trans-Pacific service from Seattle, along with Tokyo, Seoul, and Shanghai, bringing Delta's summer Asia network up to 13 routes. The route would compete head-to-head with EVA Air's Seattle-Taipei 10-time weekly service. This would also be Delta's first nonstop service to Taipei from the US mainland, as it previously launched from their Tokyo hub. It's also the only second route by a US airline flying to Taipei, with the other being United's twice-daily service from San Francisco. As a matter of fact, it's just part of Delta's growth plans in the Trans-Pacific market, putting more pressure on United, including additional flights each day to Seoul, Shanghai, Tokyo, Sydney, and Auckland from multiple hubs of theirs. It's also just part of Seattle's growth, which now sees 8 Asian carriers and Delta offering flights throughout Korea, China, Japan, Singapore, Qatar, and the UAE. Not to mention the airlines you see randomly show up for one-off visits, considering the Boeing factories in the area, leading to some interesting plane spotting in the area. As Seattle grows, so does the airport. This route, in addition to other routes that either just launched or will soon launch, such as Munich, Manila, and Nassau. That's not even looking at the new Taipei routes. EVA Air flew this route already, and that alone had Taipei as the 7th biggest international destination from Seattle. Now, Delta can buy into that. SkyTeam partner China Airlines also announced they'd be resuming service to Taipei, and earlier this year, the newest Taiwanese carrier, Starlux, announced that it too would be adding Seattle to its network. This puts Seattle as the 3rd most connected U.S. airport to Taiwan, Los Angeles being the 2nd, and San Francisco with the gold. Delta chose the A330-900 for this route, the 2nd biggest airplane in their network, and as of one day before departure, Delta One was full, Premium Economy had 1 seat, and Economy showed less than 20 seats, meaning that the aircraft was at a roughly 92% load factor. As a matter of fact, in a speech before departure, it was revealed that bookings for this route have been so successful that they already upgraded the route to an A350 starting next spring to support more passengers and cargo, and that's before the first time this route even flew. At 80 years old, the SeaTac Airport remains the busiest airport in the Pacific Northwest, 9th in the U.S. and 28th in the world, with 51 million annual passengers traveling through their 6 concourses across 91 domestic and 28 international destinations with 31 airlines. Why SeaTac, by the way? It's a homage to the Seattle and Tacoma metro areas, for which the airport serves. The airport's long been the primary hub for Alaska Airlines and trades off with Vancouver for the award for Best Airport in North America. Even though Alaska holds 55% of the traffic share in Seattle, Delta is second place with 20%. In 2011, Delta expanded their Seattle operations before formally adding a hub there in 2014, following the closure of the Tokyo Narita hub. Since Narita was a launch point for Asian destinations in Delta's network, Seattle was chosen to have a West Coast launch point for Trans-Pacific services, established to put pressure on United's San Francisco hub. At the time, it's Delta's 7th largest hub, but it does serve a specific purpose despite still being much smaller than the United's hub. At the time of posting, Delta serves 4 Trans-Pacific destinations from Seattle, United with 15 from San Francisco, and an additional 9 in the past that have been dropped, mostly due to COVID. Delta wasn't the first airline to go after Seattle, as in 2021, after Alaska joined oneworld, American Airlines announced they would increase presence in Seattle and potentially open a hub. As of last year, American pulled all current and future long-haul Seattle flights, removing their intentions and allowing Delta to take full advantage. In 2003, a terminal renovation was done to support more passengers, and more recently, Alaska and Delta growth, especially internationally, which put a pressure on Port of Seattle to expand the airport. A new international arrivals facility was completed a couple years ago, with that big old bridge connecting the South Satellite Concourse to the facility and a hallway from the A gates as well, allowing for 16 wide-body international gates. It should have been 20, but there were some design flaws, as they called it. This is proving useful as the post-COVID boom has fully hit Seattle, hitting their record passenger count last year, where they saw a single day hit just under 200,000 total passengers. The last thing I was waiting for was the baggage handling system renovation, which should be completed either now or soon. It's a bit unclear. But I will say that with the old system, in the last few years, I've had my bag lost 3 times, and all of which were at Seattle, all with different carriers. One thing's for sure, however, the Puget Sound region remains one of the country's fastest growing areas, and they do need a solid airport to support that. They wasted no time with the meal passing out hot towels while still climbing out over the mountains. Looking through the menu, they have a Chinese set and a Western set. The Chinese set looks genuinely like one of the best things I've ever seen on an airplane. Unfortunately, everyone else had the same thought because they were out of it by the time they got to me. At least the mid-flight and pre-arrival meals looked good too, and there's a good selection of drinks, especially that Starbucks coffee. It's like taking a little bit of Seattle with me to Asia. Looking through Delta's in-flight entertainment, North American carriers typically have some of the best selection of content besides Emirates and Qatar. There's 3 pages, one for the home page, one with the entertainment, and one with all the flight info. There's a ton of genres to sort by, but I spent like a minute scrolling through all the titles thinking, wow, the selection's insane, before realizing that I was only like halfway through them. TV shows are plentiful, even if not as extensive as the movies, but they still have a ton of categories, tons of favorites, and at least one full season of most shows. With a selection this large, it's easy to get lost in the selection, so just add things to favorites and you can find them later on, especially all the baseball movies they've got, which makes me a big-time fan. Delta does offer in-flight Wi-Fi, but unfortunately in the morning of my flight I got this email from them which advised me that the Wi-Fi on my flight wasn't working. I figured it was worth trying, but it was true. No Wi-Fi showed up at all. I then brought out the tray table and they put down the tablecloth. The only problem is that since the tray table can't be pushed away at all, you have to be in a fully seated position or it doesn't sit flat. While waiting for food to be delivered, we were given a bowl of nuts and a drink choice, which was of course a glass of that Starbucks coffee. Right before the main course, we got our cold drink choices, so I went with the Chinese beer option, the Tsingtao. For my lunch, I ended up with the Western chicken option. Like United, Delta also serves it all on one tray. For starters, I got a mixed green salad, a sourdough roll, burrata, and a tomato basil soup. The main course was the makhani chicken curry, including a tomato chickpea stew, almond herb couscous, and harissa roasted carrots. I always like the branded silverware, but I love the salt and pepper shaker even more, which looks like a turbofan intake. Turn one way for salt and the other way for pepper. Then the dessert cart came through, pushed by one of aviation's celebrities. Our purser today is seniority number 1 and the longest serving flight attendant in the world after the tragic passing of Bette Nash of American Airlines, according to one of our other flight attendants. Meet Joan Crandall. After the meal wrapped up, it was time to get some rest. First off, the doors were unlocked so we could get them shut. It does close pretty much all the way, with almost no gap at the floor or the side, much better than most doors at this point. The only problem is that it would slide open slowly and had to be reshut every 10 minutes or so. You can also see the height of the walls and door as seen here from eye level in a seated position. Then it was really time for bed. First things first, we have to set the bed up for that. The seat does go all the way flat, although the armrests don't move, so it was a little narrower than most seats. It's also a bit awkward where it meets the footrest. There's a platform that comes up and meets the footrest, although it's not entirely level. Then we had to dress the bed. First off was the mattress pad, which covers everything but the footrest, and it was welcomed considering the seat itself was a bit firm. Then we can lay down the comforter, which coupled with the air vents allows for great temperature control. Lastly, the pillow, which is large, like a bed pillow, although super plush. So if you like firmer pillows, this may not be the one for you. Then we can turn on the Do Not Disturb light so that we can be left to sleep peacefully. I'd say the only drawback is that the footwell is narrow, so if you sleep on your back, you don't have a ton of space to move. And if you sleep on your side, your knees are basically pressed up against that hard plastic. All said and done, however, the bed is comfortable. It's just a little tight, with the narrow leg rest and no lowering armrest. With the closing door, however, it's definitely private, and if you're in one of the even-numbered rows with a counter between you and the aisle, it's also a little extra quiet. I woke up after about 6 hours because the purser came on to tell us that we were about to enter an area of moderate turbulence and she needed everyone in their seats with their seatbelts fastened and that the restrooms would be unavailable. Once the seatbelt sign was turned off, I could finally go use the restroom after holding it for about 20 minutes. The lavatory on Delta's A330neo is nothing special. No real amenities besides the Grown Alchemist lotion and soap. The main thing I love is the foot pedal to open the trash so you don't have to touch the lid after washing your hands. Then it was time for a midnight snack. There's a couple items on the menu, but I chose to go with the pizza, which was a basil pesto pizza with mozzarella and tomatoes. It was actually super tasty, although not quite as cool of salt and pepper. There was also a selection of sweet and savory snacks, but truth be told, I was totally full at this point. As people woke up, the cabin got a bit brighter as they were cracking their windows open, allowing views of the same ocean we've been seeing for the last 10 hours. At least we weren't missing anything but water with the windows shut the whole flight. Eventually, the wonderful purser brought out orange juice for every passenger. About an hour from Taiwan, I realized that we still hadn't gotten our last meal. It wasn't long after until they delivered those same trays. I was hoping to get the Chinese-style noodles, but they ran out of that just like they did with lunch. As a matter of fact, we were also out of the French toast, so I didn't even get an option. They just kind of plopped down the tray in front of me. So with that, I present to y'all the quiche option. The 3-cheese quiche with mushrooms, poblano pepper cream, and a chicken sausage, alongside a yogurt parfait and croissant. Honestly, I ended up not eating most of it. Because of the timing of that final meal, by the time it was collected, the screen showed just under a half hour until landing. But at least we got these little chocolates. The second largest carrier in the world, Delta, turns 100 next year and is thriving, with almost 1,000 airplanes and over 300 destinations across all continents but Antarctica. They may be the second largest by passenger count, but they are first place in revenue. United still remains the largest international carrier in the US with 129 destinations outside the US, but Delta does come in second with 87, being the only US carrier in Prague, Stuttgart, and Dakar as of April. To support that, 9 hubs and 3 focus cities. Atlanta is their busiest hub and also the busiest airport in the whole world. Seattle here, though, is their primary West Coast hub, which serves as their main gateway to Asia. Their international market has been important for codeshare, but honestly it wasn't all that impressive until their merger with Northwest. In 2010, the two airlines officially merged. As of 2008, at the time of the merger, Delta was serving 39 destinations across the Atlantic if we include the Fifth Freedom flights, but only 3 flights to Asian destinations. Northwest, on the other hand, had international hubs in Amsterdam and Tokyo, both Narita and Haneda. These international hubs were their major launch points for additional international destinations. At the time of the merger, you could book a total of 78 destinations across the Atlantic and 22 in Asia. Delta hasn't maintained all of these, especially with the closure of all international hubs, but they have kept around a large Europe share, and that's enough to keep them as a major player in the world's international aviation market. Super exciting for Delta to be back in Taipei, and for the first time from the US non-stop. The US to Asia route always seems to be evolving. Every week it feels like a new route's announced while another is canceled. This has never been more true than in the post-COVID world. Airports like New York and San Francisco have spent the last couple of years getting the flights back that they lost during the pandemic, while airports like Seattle have seen an incredible boom in growth. And this flight is just the most recent example of that. On that topic, Taiwan is one of the most connected places with the US, with a ton of work between the two places and a large population of Taiwanese in San Francisco and New York. With this new service, there's now 5 carriers providing nonstop service between Taiwan and the US, 2 American carriers and 3 Taiwanese carriers. Looking specifically at Delta's product, I want to compare it with United and American, considering they make up the big 3 US international carriers. Ground-wise, Delta may have the weakest product. With upcoming additions in New York and Los Angeles, we can evaluate that at a later date. But for now, they do offer special check-in lanes for business class passengers, but their lounge leaves space to be desired. The lack of flagship lounges hurts their head-to-head comparison, so the new lounges will be welcomed greatly, although I do find it a bit weird that they chose only New York and Los Angeles, despite having other larger hubs. In flight, I actually find their hard product to be tough to judge since it depends entirely on what aircraft you're on. The A330neo that we were on has a great seat, however. I find the seats to be nice with lots of privacy and in-seat storage. My one complaint, it's just a bit tight. For the soft product, I actually thought the food was very high quality, probably the best you'll find in North America in my opinion. I do wish they didn't serve it as a one-tray service, and that they had my first choice in stock by the time they got to me both times, but I was still happy with what I got. Personally, if I'm creating the best North American carrier, I'm taking the hard product of United and the soft product of Delta. But I guess no one's perfect. Even Hannah Montana knew that. With the amount of competition to Taiwan, it's definitely worth discussing the cost versus quality of the competition. Looking specifically at business class, you can book the lowest fare on pretty much all 5 carriers if booking direct flights. The main cost difference is seen when connecting in either the US or Taiwan. If you book a Taiwanese carrier and transit onto the rest of Asia, it is significantly cheaper than booking Delta or United and connecting in either Seattle or San Francisco. At that point, I also find the Taiwanese carriers to be far better. I recently flew Starlux and it immediately became one of my favorite business classes out there. I've flown EVA Air Economy class, which was great, so I can only imagine their business class. And then I'll be trying China Airlines business class actually on my return to the States, so I guess we'll see that one soon. That's how I know that I would typically choose the Asian carriers over the American carriers. The exception for most people is the allegiance of status with Delta or United, and people that just fly with those carriers whenever possible. Lastly, as far as inaugurals go, this is my 6th inaugural flight, but first with Delta, so I was excited to compare their services to others. I absolutely loved that the fanfare began the moment we showed up to the airport with decorations and snacks at check-in. There was the little touch in the lounge, but then of course the whole gate. The best part though was the goodies. It might not have been the Polaris bear, but I totally loved the passport cover. Honestly, I'd 100% come back to a Delta inaugural again, so I guess I'll keep my eyes peeled as well as some other airlines parties. I did get the pleasure to meet some of you guys at this inaugural, so let me know if you'll be on any inaugurals soon, and until next Sunday, safe travels. I'll see y'all next time.